No sashita desel you kadike die die.
Most of the Belgians started coming in 1853, just a small number. In 1854, about 300 came. In 1855, 1,500 Belgians came. By 1856, 2,500 Belgians immigrated in 1856 alone. In 1857, it was down to about 300 people. I'm just talking about the Belgians that came to northeastern Wisconsin. When the Belgians came to Wisconsin, they had several routes. There was some ships that went in 1856 and 1855 into the port of Boston. There was other groups, that small number that went through New Orleans. Then there was the largest number came through New York City. And there was also a group in 1856 that traveled through, and 1855 traveled through Montreal, Canada, and through the Great Lakes and ended up in Green Bay. The majority of the people went to the city of Green Bay, and they stayed there for weeks at a time, and some even longer. And what they did is they decided to go and see the clerk of courts and file for what they call a declaration of an intent. Declaration of intent was a statement saying they were giving up their legal rights as Belgians and they wanted to become American citizens. Of course, they had a strong reason to do that. When they got that declaration of intent paper, at that point, they could then file for government land because they were claiming to become American citizens. And the government land was the cheapest land available and went from 50 cents to $1.25 an acre. When I done research on land records in Kewaunee County and in Door County, I found that most of the Belgians paid only 50 cents an acre for land. That was very common, not $1.25. And there was some Belgians that took 240 acres of property, some 160, but the vast majority decided to purchase 40 acres of land. There was a question always up: why did the Belgians come to Wisconsin? What made the big immigration, especially in 1855 and 1856? A big part of the immigration factor was Belgians that came to Wisconsin and the letter writing back to Belgium. And if you look at the Courier-Legrand records, where they listed, when the people left Belgium, they listed a reason for leaving Belgium. And on that village list, there's numerous references, letters received from with friends or neighbors, relatives in Wisconsin. So part of the big immigration to Wisconsin was the letter writing, I believe. One other factor that I found, that Father Dames had returned to Belgium in 1856, and he was a strong influence for immigration. You often hear about Father Dames, and he was the pastor of the Belgians, but in 1856 he wasn't in Wisconsin when 2,500 new arrivals came. So he was back in Belgium recruiting. When the Belgians got to Green Bay in 1855, a lot of them found a person that could find their land, a surveyor. There was a Reichart from Dykesville, a surveyor. There was Cecil and Thierry was a person that they used, and Isidore Minsart was another person that was being used to bring the Belgians out to their government-purchased land. But what they did is the government in Wisconsin had surveyed all this property. And when they did their survey, they pounded stakes in the land showing each quarter section, and they staked it all out. And then they had maps drawn. So when these surveyors that worked with these government officials, they had these maps, and when the Belgians came, they found someone. They had the map, and they had a general area, and that's where they went back into the woods, following the trails, and they'd be able to identify the property by the stakes. They had to find a way to get there, and I guess some of them sailed up the bay, and some of them sailed to Kewaunee and walked inland, and majority of them came from Green Bay on foot, from what I understand, or drop points off the bay. And what happens is, what I've read is that generally the husband and some adult sons went first, and they kind of got a little homestead clearing, went back to Green Bay, picked up their wives and children, and then they started the long journey of walking into their property. When you say walking, then you also have to realize that they had to carry their food, they had to carry their clothes, they had to carry their birth certificates, they had to carry their shovels, their axes, their saws. and their cookware and the food. So it was quite a journey to get from city of Green Bay into town of Red River to Lincoln to Brussels to Union to Gardner to Humboldt, wherever town of Scott, wherever they were settling. It was the same process. Was they didn't have horses, they didn't have oxen, and they had to blaze their way through to get to their land site. Then became the slow process of seeding crops, potatoes, that was the main crop, I guess, and some wheat, and cutting down the trees and dragging the trees to be burnt. And that was a slow process, and what it was very physical labor. As you probably heard, they had to drag their disc and drag their drags and plows, whatever they needed to get started between the stumps of land. So, and what I read recently is they had a process where they decided to kill the trees by stripping the bark around the trees. I just learned recently. And this caused the tree to die sooner, which reduced the number of leaves and branches on the tree, and then they would go through a pattern. They'd take those trees down and they'd start to recycle over another acre or two where they'd kill the trees first and then first cut them. So, which kind of makes sense if you realize they needed that green lumber to be moved. So after a period of 2 years and 3 years, by 1860, if you check the 1860 agricultural census, you'll find a good idea of what's going on. And looking over the agricultural census, you'll find that almost every family at this point had a milking cow, 2 oxen, and 2 to 3 hogs. That was very common. They were planting rye, they were planting wheat, they were planting potatoes, and they were also harvesting maple syrup. And on the 1860 census, it'll show the amount of land was cleared, the improved land, and it'll show the amount of bushels of crops, how many bushels they had of corn, Indian corn, wheat, and rye, and their livestock. And it also showed the value of their property and how many acres are cleared.